from a few years ago that was just my ideas. And then it came to me that I had a wealth of knowledge about what teachers need from teachers. CGMS has heading towards 3,000 graduates from our many years, and I sent a survey out at that time to probably a little over 1,000 people. We actually got over 100 back, and if you know survey statistics, that's really very good. And so, a lot of what you're going to hear tonight is going to be the actual words of teachers, and I want us to reflect on them and see what does that mean for us as school leaders. And that you'll see some statistics from them, and then some of my ideas and some quotes from other people. I'm a quote junkie, so I'm always putting in some quotes that I think add to the conversation and give us important food for thought. So, moving on, So, who am I? And I'm Kitty Bravo, as I said, and the Director of Education and one of the founders for the Center for Guided Montessori Studies. We actually started developing the program 20 years ago when Mark Selden, Tim Selden, some of you may know him or know his name, very well-known Montessorian with over 50 years experience. And his son Mark and Jonathan Wolf came to me and said, would I be involved in the development of this program that was going to be basically an online program just with a little bit of time in person. Now imagine this, 20 years ago, that was just not the common. Universities were really beginning to move full force into offering more and more online courses, but it certainly was unheard of in Montessori, and everybody in Montessori thought we were crazy. And I will tell you, I was skeptical. But I figured somebody was going to do it, and that I wanted to be involved so that I could make sure it was done well and set the bar high. And I believe that we've done that. For many, many years after that, I would tell Montessori teacher educators, add discussion forums, add little bits of what we do, that it'll expand your opportunities to connect with your students. And some would be interested, and most would, again, just think I'm crazy. Until 2020, when everybody was forced into the world of online learning. And now, what we're doing has become more common in the Montessori world. We have quite a few graduates with us today. If you are a graduate, go down to the reaction button and hit the heart, and if you're a graduate or a current student, and send a heart up. There we go. So you can see some of the people who've already graduated from our program in one level or another. I'm also a board member of the International Montessori Council. The Center for Guided Montessori Studies is an International Montessori Council educator program. Teacher education program. IMC's been around for close to 30 years, and we are one of, I like to say we're, maybe the third largest of the Montessori organizations, AMI, Association Montessori International, and AMS, American Montessori Society. We're not as big, but we're international, and we are so committed to working with schools and teachers. And many of you have been involved with IMC and attended our fun conferences, which we've also done in Asia and hope to do again in the future. Enough about that. You see some of the fun pictures I put here to give you a sense of who I am, including me and Ada over there at the Great Wall. Down in the bottom left, you see my very big family. That's what I would call my immediate family, the descendants from my mother and father. That's pretty awesome, isn't it? We're over 100. I have 6 brothers and sisters. And up in the top left, you see me as a young teacher there in pink with the dark hair. And the little girl in the yellow just to the right of the pink tower is my daughter, and she is now a Montessori teacher of many years, and at the early childhood level has been a trainer with CGMS and is currently taking her elementary training. My husband in the middle, and let's don't forget my little dog B over in the corner, and my grandchildren at the dinosaur exhibit. So just some fun videos so you can get, and fun pictures so you get a sense of who I am. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute because I want to know who you are and I want to be able to see more of the screen. So again, using those reactions, if you are head of school, a main administrator, one of the top leaders in your school, whether you're called principal, director, administrator, head of school, use one of those reaction buttons and send a heart up or a group of hearts. If you are a head of school, an administrator, a leader, main leader in your school. So lots and lots of you. Good. That's what we expected. If you are a teacher in a Montessori school, send a reaction up. So some of you I see are school leaders and teachers. Been there, done that one. That one's a fun one, trying to juggle all of that. If you are a parent at a Montessori school, let's send a reaction up. And I have to do this one just because it's fun for me. If you're a grandparent of a child in a Montessori school, send that up. We have a few old people like me. Sorry, didn't mean to call you old. Well, yeah, I did. But I embrace being old. I love it. So let's see. If you are new to Montessori and here just to find out more about Montessori, send a reaction up. All right, well, great. Nobody's brand new to Montessori. That'll help as we move on. All right, so let me go to the next slide. So I went to the next slide, but I didn't share. All right, let me come back to oops. All right, now I've done it. Hold on a minute, guys. You would think I haven't been doing this for 20 years. I hit the wrong button and I closed out my PowerPoint completely, and so I have to bring it back. Hold on. While I'm doing that, I can talk. So the first thing I want us to do to frame this before we start looking at what the teachers have said about what they need from schools is what is it that we do in Montessori? What is it that our teachers need our support doing? Why are we here, shall I say? So let me come back to Zoom because I'm ready to come back to my slideshow. I am sorry, guys, for not being better organized. All right, now we can go. Here we go. So as a school leader, you hold the vision of your school. To me, this is the most important part of your job. And what do I mean by the vision? Sometimes people talk about the mission of the school, and sometimes they talk about the vision. The vision is, who are you? Why are you as a school? And the mission is more, what do you do to make that mission happen? So you're the one who holds the vision, the why are we here? And in Montessori, why are we here? Why are we doing what we do? And from my perspective, it's much more than about education. We are not here just to teach children the alphabet and counting and on up into, geography, history, grammar. Those are wonderful things that we do. They're almost tools, I would say, for our bigger work. And from my perspective, our bigger work is to support the development of the unique potential of every human being that we come in contact with, to help prepare these humans by supporting their full potential to go out and make a difference in the world. That's what our real vision is. That's what our work is. It certainly was the vision of Maria Montessori as she developed her work further. It was not just to educate, but to transform society, to change the world, to make the world a better place. And it begins with the children, and it begins by supporting their development and protecting their being, their budding personality, being able to respect and appreciate who each and every one of them are, and support their growth and development. And so we hold a vision for that within our school. Our job as leaders is to keep reminding people that this is why we're here. This is what we're doing, so that we assure respect for each child and working with each child where they are. And so to me, that's the main role of the school leader, to hold that vision. You could say to be the compass, to help keep everyone going in the same direction. But we're not just holding that vision of supporting the unique and full potential of every child. I said every human. And as leaders, one of the most important jobs we have is to help develop the potential of our teachers, our guides, and help them grow and be the best that they can be. Brene Brown, who wrote the book Dare to Lead and many, many others since, said, I define a leader as anyone who takes responsibility. I like that word she's put in there, responsibility, for finding the potential in people and processes, and who has the courage to develop that potential. Now, Catherine introduced me as her boss. I hope she doesn't just think of me her boss. She said I was her mentor. But I'd like us to consider that the old role of school principal and director and leader as the boss in the school is not really productive. Being a person who develops people's potential, who looks for their potential and develops that potential, is very different from bossing people around. I'm a bit of a bossy person, so that one I'm still working on learning to really look for what's best in people and support that and guide that, and be a strength in your school for those who are in the trenches doing this work. Lao Tzu, the famous philosopher, said, a leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, we did it ourselves. And that reminded me of the quote that we're so familiar with from Maria Montessori, where she said, the greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, the children are working as if I do not exist. And that's what we hope for our teachers in our school, that they will do this work as if we do not exist. I can remember my dad, who had run businesses, saying, to me as I was a business owner, a school owner, and running a school, that, you have to be there, because when you're not there, they're not going to perform. They're not going to do their work the same way. And that's not our philosophy. We need to be there. You're going to hear that in the words of the teachers. They want you to be there. But we want them to be able to do this and to be so inspired and passionate to do this work that they would do it even if we were not there. And I believe that that's how most people who come into Montessori who they are. They're there doing this work, whether we as the leader are there or not, and they'll do it better if they feel supported by us instead of feel that we just bring more challenges to them. So when I asked the teachers in that survey, what qualities, what characteristics do you think are essential for a Montessori school leader? Here's some of the words that stood out over and over again. As I went through, I took and did little, listed out what these words, and as they were said often, I would, as they were said again, I'd put a little tick mark, and unfortunately I'd have to go do it again because I didn't keep my tabulations. But these are the ones that came up often. So what are they looking for from leadership? They're looking for inspiration. They want you to be service-oriented. They want you to be brave and a visionary. They need you to have financial skills. They need you to keep the school stable. They want it to be inclusive and equitable. They want you to be responsible and flexible and have a sense of humor. So I want you just to look at this for a minute, and I want you to do some personal reflection and think about which of these skills or qualities are ones you feel that are really strong for you, that resonate with you, that these are areas where you shine within your school. And let me make this point. If you are a teacher and not a school leader, as in an administrator in a school, you're still a leader. You're a leader in your classroom. So which of these qualities do you feel are strong? I'm going to be quiet for a minute, and if you feel inspired, you can put something that resonates with you in the chat. If you don't, that's fine, but you could put one of these or some of these qualities. Or it could even be just one, if you don't want to brag about yourself, one you agree is really important. It's sometimes hard for us to brag about ourselves. Now I'd like you to do the same thing, only you don't have to put this one in the chat because this one might be harder to own up to in public. Which one or which ones are some of the things maybe you need to work on as a leader? So make some notes about that. And we'll move on. So now we're getting to this place where we're going to have the actual words of the from the survey. A Montessori school leader must be kind, understanding, supportive, and confident. It's especially helpful if the leader has classroom experience. The leader must trust his or her teachers. So we're going to come back to trust again later because it comes up again. But I certainly think that we can all understand it's hard to thrive in an environment where you can't trust your leader. And so they want us to be confident. And goodness, it seems like being kind is almost shouldn't even have to be said. But I could tell you horror stories through the years of working with teachers as a teacher educator and as a consultant of times when school leaders were not kind. And we know in the classroom that being kind doesn't always mean that you just say yes. Sometimes you have to deal with difficult situations. Can we be kind but firm, just like we ask and expect our teachers? A positive school leader, in my opinion, is someone who can see the potential. There's that quote from Brene Brown, who can see the potential and qualities in their staff and knows how to highlight, encourage the growth in that skill. Someone who is optimistic, encouraging, and knows how to cultivate the skills of their teachers. So I think this one is really important. It goes back to, as again, what Brene Brown said about recognizing the potential in people and seeing that as an important part of your leadership role, but really looking at what are the positive skills this person has and how do I grow those skills. In the classroom, when we're working with children, sometimes we look to where are their strengths and how do I use those strengths to fill in the gaps, to maybe entice them into areas where they're not as strong. Another thing that comes to mind here with this is and I don't have the quote in front of me, but a book I was reading called Love and Work by Marcus Buckingham. And I actually saw an article by that title in the Harvard Business Review. And he said that when we can get in touch with what we really love about our work, what are we good at and what is it that we really love, then we can use that and do more of that and infuse that. Let's say, for instance, as a leader, you really love problem solving. That when there's a challenge and something you've got to figure out, you're in there with the ideas and you're excited about that. So how did you use that more and more? And how do we help our teachers find what they love about their work and what they're good at and do more of? Now, this idea of finding what you're good at and growing that, looking at what you're not good at your challenge areas as an opportunity is called a growth mindset. And as school leaders, we want to help nurture that garden of growth, as we see the person in the left doing, and nurture that idea of a growth mindset. And so one of the things we need to do as a school leader is look at my faculty and see where are they on the continuum of being more growth mindset or more fixed mindset. Do they tend to kind of think, oh, give up, oh, I just can't do that? Do they really become very frustrated and upset about mistakes? Or are they on the other side of it and they really appreciate their mistakes as growth opportunities? They're excited about feedback. And how do we help move people more and more towards this growth mindset away from the fixed mindset? And I'm reminded of Dr. Montessori's quote where she says to look upon our errors, our mistakes, to look at with a friendly attitude. Again, I don't remember the exact quote, but, make friends with your failures. Be willing to look at your mistakes as opportunities. And this is an important part of our role as a leader. When somebody is really challenged and struggling, how do we come to them in a way that's so supportive and helps them look at this as an opportunity and find resources? So I want to share with you one of the things that we did at my school, and I actually learned this, if you know Kathy Leach, who is the executive director of the International Montessori Council, actually the retiring executive director. And I worked at her school for a while, and she used this professional growth plan process with her teachers instead of an annual evaluation. Instead of, I'm judging you, I'm coming in and evaluating and judging you, and I'm going to tell you the areas you need to improve, she worked in partnership with their teachers to come up with a growth plan so that every year her teachers had one or two, three at the most goals that they were working on. And when I came to work at her school, she had been doing this for several years, and this had become such a strong part of the culture that right at the beginning of the year, the teachers who'd been there for a while came in from day one talking about the goals that they had and excited about what the goals they had were for that year. So the way this process works is you begin with the asking the person what to reflect on what is their mission. We could even say, and their vision for working with children. How does that align with the school's mission and vision? Then over a period of weeks, in the first weeks of school, the first 6 weeks, because you really need to give time if it's a new employee, they go through a self-evaluation process. You keep it as simple as possible, but a document for them to look through some things like what is their attitude, what is their strengths or challenges in working with parents and working with fellow co-workers, how is their approach to guiding positive discipline and guidance of children, where are their strengths, where are their challenges. So you have a set of questions that they're going to look at. Then you, during this time, are coming through their classrooms, observing, making notes. You're possibly using that same evaluation tool or your own checklist. And then you're meeting with them periodically and giving them feedback until you have the meeting at the end of this self-evaluation process, where you meet with them to set goals. And then when you set the goals, you make a plan. How are they going to go about meeting this goal? What are their resources? And who are their resources? Then after they set their goals, you meet with them periodically through the year to check in and find out how they're doing. And at the end, there's some piece of accountability. Either they're going to report back to you what they have done and what they have learned, or what's really exciting is when they can give a presentation to their coworkers, or in a faculty meeting, you even celebrate everybody's growth through the year and have people share what they've learned from this process. So I find this a very valuable process for developing that growth mindset and encouraging that building of skills and building of potential. So back to what the teachers said in the survey. What do they need from leaders? This person said trust. I believe it's essential for school leaders to have a deep sense of trust in their educators and act on that. Teachers want to be able to see and feel that you trust them, that you're acting on that trust. And here she describes what that would be like. Take the time to get to know us better so that you can truly trust us. Then, when we need your trust most, during a difficult moment with a student, you trust us to handle it well. You don't hover over our lesson plans. You trust us. You don't step in with parents and overrun us. You trust us. You know that we will always have the child in mind, and you trust that in us. And then this person said, never hire a teacher you cannot trust. And I have to add to that, as just like when we accept new children in the school, we don't always know what challenges they're going to bring. Don't we know as school leaders that we have a certain amount of trust when we hire people, but we don't always know what challenges that they may bring. And so I have to add that you work with that person who maybe brings those challenges that you didn't expect, and you're working towards building to a place of trust. And then I have to say from experience, don't hold on too long. If you find that you really can't trust that person and they're not a good fit for your school, and they may be a great person and even a good teacher, but not a good teacher for your school. Again, when I worked at Kathy's school, there was this teacher. She had over 20 years experience. She was a good teacher. That she was in a 3 to 6 class and had not worked with 3-year-olds in pretty much that entire 20 years. She worked in a school where they kind of broke up who they worked with, which is not really Montessori. You want a teacher working across the whole group. And she worked in language only with the older children. And she was struggling so in working with these 3-year-olds. And she was always, don't do this, don't run, don't carry the red rods like that, don't. And Kathy and I worked with her all year long, giving her lots of positive discipline tips and having her take a course and read a book and giving her language, and kept trying to help her understand that at this school, our culture was that we work from the positive, not from the don'ts. And in the end, it was determined that we could not trust her to make that leap. And at the end of that year, we asked her to further her career elsewhere, as my husband likes to say about when you let somebody go. And actually, she stayed on substituting with us for many years. We could trust her enough for that temporary role, but long term, we just could not have her in a classroom where her approach to children was so negative. If you can't trust a teacher, work with them, try to build up that potential and skill. But Kathy used to say, I want to support you. Part of her mission was to support everybody in finding and living their passion. And this school is not the place where you can live that passion, and we want to help you find the place where you can. Brene Brown again said, if we want people to fully show up, to bring their whole selves, including their unarmored whole hearts, so that we can innovate, solve problems, and serve people, serve the children, serve the families, the parents. We have to be vigilant about creating a culture in which people feel safe, seen, heard, and respected. And you'll see that in upcoming quotes from some of the teachers from the surveys. But this, to me, speaks to trust. People are not going to feel heard and respected if you're not able to trust them. And so we want to create that culture. And certainly we want people, our teachers, to come with their hearts open, because you will be so much more successful with children and families when you approach them with love, with an open heart. But the same needs to be true for us as leaders. Can we come with that open heart? So the survey asked the teachers, what qualities or characteristics present challenges in the effectiveness of a school leader? So the first one is absence. Too much distance from the classroom. Even just a few-minute walk through once a week can make a big difference. I liked to do, when I was ahead of school, almost every day I just walked through each classroom and would spend a few minutes, stand back, observe, smile. Do not stand there and shake your head. Smile, help the teacher relax, but just walk through, be present. Just recently, I met with one of our graduates who had left the school that she had started at, and she said one of the biggest problems is that the head of school was absent. And I mean not just absent from walking through classrooms. She would come late or would not come at all. And it would put this teacher in an embarrassing situation because parents would come asking for her and she'd have to say she wasn't there. So our presence is really important. So next the person says, what presents challenges in effectiveness? When they say, I'll get back to you, and they don't follow through. And I know this is one I say to teachers all the time. You can't always know the answer or have the quick answer for the parent. So sometimes you need to say, I need to think about that, or I need to check on that, and I'll get back to you. But you better get back to them, because I've seen that situation. And as the head of school, the parent comes and says, teacher so-and-so said they'd get back to me, and then it's been weeks and they never did. Well, you want to model that. And your teachers need to feel safe and secure, because if you say you'll get back to them about something, you will. And then, of course, micromanaging. There's, this razor's edge, this fine balance of how much do I manage and how much and guide, and how much freedom do I give? And does this sound familiar? Isn't that often one of the challenges of our teachers? How much do they guide and manage in their classroom and guide each child? And how much freedom do they give? Teachers don't want to be micromanaged, but every teacher, just like every child, has different needs. Some teachers need more direct guidance, and some teachers need you to ask questions about how it's going and then leave them to it again and trust them. So finding that balance is really important. Just yesterday, I met with the head of school of one of our interning students, and they're having difficulty because this teacher's kind of quiet and reserved and is having difficulty communicating with parents. And I said, after our conversation, it sounds like this teacher needs a little more direct guidance. She needs you to give her scripts, give her ideas of what kinds of things to say to the parents. But if you did that with a different teacher, they would feel micromanaged. So just like for the teachers, that tough challenge of finding the balance of freedom and structure, guidance, and freedom, that's a big one for us as leaders. And it takes some real self-reflection. I know my tendency is to be a bit controlling. And so I've had to really work and learn at that. And both my personal relationships with my children, even my husband, who will say I'm bossy, and when I was working with teachers. And then you don't want to give them too much freedom. Too much, that's the absence that was talked about in the first point. So the next point they say is poor communication. Again, neglect, not communicating what the expectations are. We'll see that again in another point from someone else. Lack of vision. If you are committed to a vision of the school, you're not communicating it. They don't know that you are. They don't know that you have a plan for the future, so they may not feel as secure. This is a big one. Favoritism among the faculty or families. You know, we have to be so careful for that everyone feels appreciated. That there are leadership issues, that you as a leader don't understand your job, or you need to build some of your own skills. Ignoring problems that feel like a hole in the hull of our ship. And I've heard this from teachers where they go to matter of fact, I'll tell you, my daughter had that experience at a school, and she was one of the most experienced teachers at the school. And yet the school leaders, when she would go to them with problems either that she was having, that she needed help and support with children in her classroom or families, or problems with how things were being managed at the school, because this was a second campus and the school leaders they were absent, they weren't there, and she wasn't listened to. And she did feel like there was a hole in that ship, and she didn't stay at the school. We don't want to lose our good teachers because we aren't providing the leadership that is needed. These again are more characteristics that are qualities that inhibit leadership effectiveness. The characteristic that presents challenges in the effectiveness of a school leader are an inability to face and address conflict within the staff, the inability for a school leader to receive input from the staff, and the ability to think through major challenges and implement them, and implement not the challenges but interventions effectively. So let's break this down a little bit and look at this. So this first one about addressing conflict within the staff, this one is really important. Your teachers cannot be present and successful in the classroom if they're struggling with a teaching partner. Or I know one teacher told me she felt bullied by one of the other teachers who was always criticizing her. In another situation, there were three toddler teachers working together that were not getting along. And I was invited by the school to come in and help with the reconciliation process. And as they were speaking, each person spoke their truth of what they felt the problem was, and then they would repeat it. The others would repeat back what they hear. You're probably familiar with that kind of conflict resolution process. And in the middle of this process, all of a sudden the light bulb went off for these three teachers, and they realized that their toddlers were acting out the tension and the conflict that they thought they were hiding from them. There was more biting, more pushing, more hitting going on in that toddler class, which if you've worked with toddlers, you know those are ways that toddlers communicate, because they often don't have their words when they're feeling stressed. So we need to address these conflicts because they're causing other problems in the school. And so there's a term called courageous conversations. Being willing to go and have those conversations when they're difficult and guide them and guide your faculty through a process that comes to resolution. And once again, I'll give you another example, another one from my daughter. You're going to think all of her schools she worked in were problems, but she worked in a school that for a year and a half, she worked with a teacher who would yell at her across the room, yell at her co-teacher, my daughter, and yell at children. And one incident after another, for a year and a half, she went to the administration before the administration finally let this teacher go. And it was causing such problems and turmoil for my daughter, but also in her classroom. She had children with challenges that they were not able to work through them because there was such conflict between these two teachers. So we have to be willing to work through the conflict with our staff. And we have to be willing to receive input and be ready to make changes in a timely manner. And also, if we can't make that change, be ready to explain that. And again, in this situation with my daughter, in the first year of co-teaching with this person, they told her what they were doing to mitigate the situation, why they needed some more time to give this person a chance. And my daughter was willing to continue until it continued on into the second year without any change. So we have to be ready to make the change, and when we're not, we need to be able to clearly communicate what we're doing and why we're doing it the way we are. Because the next point is miscommunication and passive aggressiveness. I don't like to think that a school leader would be passive aggressive. Little microaggressions, saying, the backhanded compliment where you make a compliment but you're really pointing out somebody's flaw. Making light of a situation that a staff member finds serious and not holding themselves accountable, not holding yourself as a leader accountable. Now, I want you to remember, these are actual quotes from teachers. And a teacher isn't going to make these kind of points unless they've lived it. So you want to be asking yourself, are people living this kind of thing under my watch as a leader? And then this one's an interesting characteristic that can challenge your effectiveness: doing too much and not asking for help. Your job as a school leader is huge, and you need to be willing to delegate to others Get help. And I'll also take this time to point out it's also a very lonely job, because you can't go to your teachers and talk about your problems as a school leader. You can't go to them when you've had a problem with a parent, unless it directly, relates to what's going on with that teacher. We can't go to our teachers, and heaven forbid don't go to parents, even if were your friends before they sent their children to the school or they've become friends. You can't go to them with the challenges of the school. That's a recipe for problems, for big problems, for nightmares. And so it's a lonely job. That's why you need each other. And one of the things I'd like to see us do is look at creating collaboratives of school leaders. We can do that so easily these days through Zoom. Of school leaders that may be a group of 10 leaders could be all over Asia, who want to meet once a month and just share their experiences and what works and what's our challenges. I did this that's how I actually became friends with Kathy Leach. We were both running schools in Florida, and we would meet once a month with other Florida school leaders. So don't do too much. Ask for help, and find people outside of your school who can be a listening ear and a support to you. Further, this person says not being forthright in events or happenings at the school. So now you're not trustworthy. Bringing staff into the drama that should be kept within the administration. So again, that's speaking to what I was just saying. You can't spread that drama around, which makes it a lonely job. If leaders do not understand and follow the Montessori philosophy, there's a large gap between the teachers and admin. Administrators, well, let me stop right there before I go on to the next part. I was actually surprised that this did not come up more, that the leaders, needing leaders that understand Montessori philosophy. I was encouraged by that, because to me that meant that the teachers I was surveying were in schools where school leaders had a strong knowledge of Montessori. If you don't have that strong knowledge as a Montessori leader, then there's plenty of opportunities these days to learn more, to take courses. We'll talk about at the end some of our professional development courses that provide overviews of early childhood and elementary. There are school leadership courses you can take. It is important. You can't hold the vision for a Montessori school if you don't understand Montessori. So further, this same person said administrators should also be aware that their presence needs to follow the same expectations as the guides. Now, I teach this to our teachers in training. If it's a rule for the children, it's a rule for you. If you don't shout across the room and say, everybody use your quiet voice, screaming, everybody use your quiet voice. You have to go to them and walk to them and quietly say, use your quiet voice. So the same thing needs to be true for you as the leader. As you walk through the classrooms, you're following the classroom rules. And as you bring parents in to tour the school, you're standing back and speaking quietly. You're following those same expectations. That you know how to interrupt a teacher. You don't interrupt a teacher in the middle of a lesson unless it's an emergency. You quietly observe in a classroom. You speak to the children in a soft, positive way, and you're at the child's level when interacting with them. Nice advice, nice reminders for us to be the models of the respect for when we work with children, the same respect we want our teachers to have. And then the next person says, not being in the trenches. We know how things should work on paper, but if one is not in the classroom, you can't effectively assist with community or behavior problems when you're not supportive, you're non-supportive. And so by being in the trenches again, they're saying, are you getting in the classrooms and observing so that you know what's happening in those classrooms? Then if a parent says to you, things are really crazy and chaotic in the classroom, you can say, well, I observe in that classroom regularly. And then you can list off some positives. But of course, you want to always validate. I understand, Mr. Parent, you're concerned, and I'm going to get in there and observe some more, and I'll get back to you. But I can tell you, I'm seeing some real positives in that classroom. But you can only say that if you really have seen that. And here, this question to our school leaders, our teachers were, I wish my school leader, administrator, understood this about my work. And this person said, and I know you all are hoping that it was one of your school teachers who said this, I have a great administrator. She's doing a great job. I feel understood. I know we'd all like that to be the response when we ask, what do you want them to understand about you? And the next one, though, is a common one I hear from teachers. Planning time is essential. They need more time. And parent communication is hard. Some teachers are wonderful working with children, and they struggle in their communication with parents. They're nervous. They don't know what to say, especially if you have a young teacher who doesn't have children of their own. I was in that situation. I was 20 when I took my Montessori training and out there teaching classrooms when I had no children, and parents would come to me like I was supposed to be an expert, and I felt like I had imposter syndrome. I didn't know from experience. And so providing guidance, workshops on parent communication, so they learn to develop partnerships with parents and approach parents in a positive way. They know how to send out those pictures and those little notes that keep parents feeling connected and feeling like they know what's going on. And here again, this person says, the next one, we need time for planning and for preparing our spaces. Often our professional development events or special gatherings are planned during times when teachers really need open-ended time to work in their classrooms. Pure planning, prep time often feels like it's an afterthought. So do you have planning time in the schedule for your teachers? It's hard to fit it in, especially with the teachers of the younger children, because you need adults, the right number of adults in those rooms all the time, and you may not have floaters who could take their place to provide some planning time. Do you hold that time for planning and preparation of the classroom sacred, or are you scheduling every moment of professional development or after school time? If we say that the prepared environment is a core principle of Montessori, we have to give teachers time to prepare that environment. So when I ran my school, I had 2 weeks of pre-service time, 2 weeks of planning and prep time before the school year started. A lot of schools give 1 week or 3 to 5 days. I gave 2 weeks because I wanted to have plenty of time for staff meeting, community time. We'd have meals, a couple of meals together during those 2 weeks. I wanted to be able to do some workshops with them during that time. And I wanted to do that without taking all of their time that they needed to prepare their classrooms. This person says, I wish my administrator understood how hard teachers work. She's never worked in a classroom, and sometimes feels like she doesn't understand how much work goes into creating a functional, prepared environment. I understand that our school must be run effectively as a business too, but sometimes enough is enough. Cramming as many children as possible into each classroom is a clear path to teacher burnout. My administrator complains about having to pay teachers overtime, but fails to realize that there is no built-in planning time during the school day. If we don't stay late, come in early, come in on weekends, then work will never get done. We don't have support staff, and it feels like we don't have a minute to breathe and collect our thoughts. My administrator is a kind person and runs a good business, but she doesn't empathize with the teacher experience. Wow. So our teachers need time. They need to respect how much work it takes to do this job. They need you to understand how passionate and hard the teachers are working and working in the rooms. They need to understand that I take the job from my heart, but I can get burned out if I have so many children in my care. They need to understand we all want to feel seen and heard. Understanding of a need requires action to address it. So not just understanding, but taking action. Understanding means nothing if something is not done to address the issue. They want you to understand that it is mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausting to be a teacher. It's so important that we encourage our teachers to fill their cup, to refuel. I used to give out certificates when teachers I saw that they were working a lot after school, or they'd come to a parent event, they'd done something above and beyond, helped with a project. I couldn't give them a whole day off, extra day off very often. So I created little certificates for a half day off. And I'd give those out as an token of appreciation, and they just had to schedule it with me ahead of time because I would go in their classroom to give them that half day off. I also gave additional days besides 6 sick days. I gave 2 mental health days a year, meaning I gave permission. You don't have to lie and call in sick. You just call in and say, I need a day, because you had 2 extra days besides the sick days that were designated as mental health days. The next person says they want you to understand it's my heart and soul. It's challenging, but I do not ask for things unless I really need them. So I want to point this one out because it was said time and time, pun intended. Teachers need time. They need you to plan in time. They need time to meet with their teaching partner. If they're co-teachers or they're a teacher and an assistant, they need time to be able to sit and talk about what they're seeing in the classroom and how they can work together to support the children. They need time to observe. I can't tell you how many teachers have told me, because I've done observation workshops, and they've told me that they're nervous about sitting down and observing because if their administrator walks by, they'll think that they're not doing anything. I mean, observation is a core Montessori philosophy. We want to see them sitting and observing. And then you need time to go through your observations, to look for patterns, to see what that tells you, to assess and reflect so that you can do plan what I call the experiment. Now that I've observed this child is interested in this, I'm going to guide them to this lesson, or I'm going to create this lesson, or this child who has this behavioral challenge and I'm seeing this, and this, I'm going to guide in this way. We're going to try this technique. And in order to be able to make those kinds of plans, they need to observe and have time to reflect and plan. and create new lessons. Teachers need time. How are we going to give them more time? When do you feel supported by your school leader? Again, you want to be this school leader who the teacher said almost always. That's what we want if we were to ask this question. If you're a school leader, you want your teachers to say, I almost always feel supported, or even better for them to say always. They feel supported when you take the time for regular check-ins, monthly staff appreciation and team building, desserts, flowers, that you give them a new plant. This is going to come up again. Another person who asks for snacks. Little things like that, though, go a long way for people to really feel supported. Just little things of appreciation. And then that you stop and you really listen to them. And again, do something. When do you feel appreciated? When they come by my class and observe what I do with my students, when they listen to my needs and they try to help me, when they have a conversation and they show interest. You're not already, one thought out the door, shall we say. You're really there and present. And again, we're modeling what we want them to do for parents, what we want them to do with each other, with their staff members, and what they do with children. We're modeling being present, being caring, being kind, showing interest, and being willing to help solve their problems. When they make time for me, they really hear me, they see me, empathize. When they clearly care and offer support. When they're willing to step in the classroom and do the work. Are you willing to step in and help? And if that's not, some of you, your job as a leader may be more administrative, more the business end. Then I hope you have a experienced Montessori guide who is the coach, the mentor, or the Montessori coordinator, the curriculum support person. And that they're getting in the classroom, getting in the trenches, as somebody said, and helping and supporting. When I present a problem and I get empathy, maybe not a solution, but an empathetic, reflective listening ear. I feel supported if any parent or staff is not being very respectful towards me, and my school leader is always there to support me. Always there to support me. I worked in a school where the head of school would always take the parent's side. A parent would come in concerned about something, and before the head of school looked into it, they were jumping in there with that parent, agreeing that this is a problem and that they would do something about it with that teacher. And the teacher would be called into the office and berated before they even really knew what the problem was. Similarly, the next person said, when the challenges of my experiences are validated and understood with compassion, when what I'm doing well is recognized, and I feel I'm not alone in trying to accomplish a normalized Montessori environment. When the needs of children are addressed and taken into consideration. I want my teachers to solve their own problems in the classroom. I really don't like it when I have a teacher that at a drop of a hat sends the child to the office. I want when a teacher brings a child to the office, it's because they want, this is a rare occasion, and they want to put particular emphasis to that child of how serious that was. Because if they send people to the office all the time, it's giving the children the message that they're not capable of taking care of the problem themselves. So we want to guide our teachers in how to solve the problem for themselves. But when they come to us, either with the child or after school at another time, and they're telling us about a problem with the child, they want our help. Whether it's that we need to come in and observe, we maybe need another peer teacher to observe, and let's all work together with some feedback on how to support this child. We call that a child study process in my school, where we go through a series of observations and then what are we seeing and how do we, what ideas do we have? And sometimes it means we need to bring in an outside observer, a specialist, or we need to recommend a parent receive some kind of outside support. The teachers need to know you take those problems seriously and you help. Maybe it's just you need to help them find some resources, some different techniques. And I'll have to tell you, our teachers right now are struggling at a level that we've never seen before. Children are coming to them who from almost birth have spent too much time on screens. Children who are already addicted at 2 and 3 to gaming. And gaming sends these dopamine rewards to the brain and all of that bling, 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 and they come in with no ability to attend to work. And it's really hard to normalize children, to bring them to normalization if they want work, because the secret to normalization is engagement with meaningful work. Our teachers need more help than ever. So we need to be proactive in looking for resources for how to help teachers and giving them the encouragement to keep trying, to see what the interests are of this child and use any interest to create a work, even if it doesn't seem like it's something we would normally create a work around, that might get that child engaged, doing something with their hands instead of looking for that outside stimulation that they get from gaming. We're in a really critical place for humanity, and I'm afraid to say our teachers need more help than ever. And I had to throw this last one in. This teacher felt supported when her school sent them to Montessori training with CGMS. And I hope some of you will support your teachers in that way too. So teachers need to know you have their back, that you've been in the classroom, you understand what goes on in their classroom. You if you don't, you're providing resources that do, that you're listening, that you understand, and you help them find solutions. You take action. Teachers need to know you have your back. And again, as I said, that if a parent is concerned, you validate, oh, I can understand you being concerned about that. Let me find out what's going on. I'm sure Miss Teacher will be concerned when they hear this. And let's find out what's really going on and all work together to solve the problem. Then that teacher knows that you have their back. So some statistics as we get closer to wrapping up. My school leader has provided clear expectations about my job. Kind of a critical one. If you're going to find that balance of autonomy and guidance and direction, which is what we would call it with adults, freedom and discipline. How much autonomy do I give them? How much direction do I give them? It all begins with clear expectations. Fortunately, 42% of the teachers surveyed believed that their school was providing clear expectations. Another 38% said they somewhat agree, and they'd gotten some expectations, but maybe it wasn't quite clear enough. But 14.9% disagreed that they'd gotten clear expectations. We have some work to do in that area. My school leader observes in my classroom. Only 14.9% said that happens frequently. Leaders, we are way too busy. We have to find the time to get into the classrooms. Look at that, 36% said rarely. Only 9% said never, but I'd like that to be 0. As a school leader, you need to be visible in your school. You need to be seen. One thing I used to do, because I started out as a teacher, so it was really hard to give up being in the classroom. So one of the ways I observed was that I would go sit in a corner in the 3 to 6 classrooms and give sandpaper letter lessons. And I'd sit with my back to the wall so I could see the classroom. And so while the child is finding t, I could look around and see what was going on. And so once a week, and I'd rotate which classroom, I would spend 20 minutes in the classroom doing something with children. In elementary, I would ask the teacher, what can I do to help? What can I do with children in the classroom? It might be you listen to children who are just starting to read. With older children, it might be you're helping them with research. Something that you can do and watch the class at the same time. And also those short walkthroughs and having time to actually sit and observe for a longer period of time. No teacher expects an administrator to be in the classroom all or most of the time. However, it makes a big difference when they visit often enough to have a sense of how the classroom functions, what challenges teachers may be dealing with. A quick pop in a few times a week just to say hi and take the temperature shows a genuine interest in how students and staff are faring. Finding opportunities to acknowledge hard work goes a long way. And again, this was a comment from one of the surveys. I've had various school leaders, and the ones that have had the biggest impact and garnered the most respectful relationships are those who took time to be in the classrooms, even just briefly, and connect with teachers and students, keeping the focus on the vision of our Montessori environments while staying child-centered. School leaders provide helpful feedback concerning my work, classroom, or children. So look at 30% say rarely. Only 19% frequently. At least 42%, it's occasionally. So it looks like we as leaders could do some work on our being able to give helpful feedback. And we certainly heard that from the comments from the teachers that they're looking for that. They want that. They want you in the classroom. They want you in the trenches. Comments. The best leaders know how to figure out what each of their teachers need. Just like we have to figure out what children need. We need to figure out where the teacher is and work from there. Some teachers need more help with classroom management, some need curriculum help, some need to be told they're doing a good job, and some need a hands-off approach. The school leader in my school is very kind, and I feel I can have honest conversations that addresses the needs that I bring up and support my lifelong learning. The head of school demonstrates commitment to growth with all the school staff and inspires us to push the boundaries of our comfort levels. In the classroom, I tell teachers, your job is to stretch the children, find new ways to challenge them. That's our job as leaders. Stretch them, push the boundaries, stretch their comfort level. But remember, that's different from each teacher. The newer teacher, that stretch may be really small, and that really small stretch may feel momentous to them, like they're having to climb a mountain. We have to be understanding. Set clear expectations and boundaries is helpful. Setting goals for us as teachers is always helpful, as well as using us for our strengths. Using sounds a little funny, but helping back to that first quote from Brene Brown, seeing the potential and working with that. One thing my school leader leaders do is to keep a stash of teacher snacks in a cabinet and seltzers, that bubbly water in the fridge. And it seems small, but a seltzer and some chips or chocolate, always chocolate for me, make a huge difference in staff morale. I think simple acts of appreciation of staff go a long way. Simple acts. And one thing I'll tell you about one school that I worked, actually I've been in a couple of schools that do this, but it was when I worked at Kathy Leach's school, the teacher bathroom was beautiful. There was a little table with fresh flowers that were changed daily. There were little cards with quotes on it. There was a candle. And so, I mean, when you take a bathroom break as a teacher and it's a haven like that, it means the world. Having those snacks in your teacher lounge, buying pizza every once in a while, or whatever it is, having that chocolate. Simple little acts of appreciation to say thank you. Writing that thank you note, sending the thank you email, acknowledging them in front of a parent or in front of another staff member. Say thank you. Have good communication. We've heard this over and over from the quotes from the teachers. Be connected. Show compassion, empathy, and love. This is one of my favorite all-time quotes. It comes from Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Love, Pray, in an article on the Oprah website where she said, if we try to see things with the most generous eyes, searching for the truth, yes, but then bestowing upon that truth the brightest and kindest interpretation, we can learn how to perceive a more beautiful world. Do that, and I promise you, you will get to live in one. And this reminds me of the quote from the Montessori Decalogue where she says, look for what is good in the child and there'll be less and less room for the bad. And we need to do this with our teachers. Look at them with generous eyes. See what's true, but try to have a kind interpretation. Look for what's good, and that will be strengthened. Dr. Montessori said, of all things, love is the most potent. I'm a big believer that the core, the heart of our work, to use that pun, is love. And we as leaders need to let our love for our work, our love for children and families, a love for our school, a love for humanity, we need to let that love be our strength, to give us the strength to be good leaders and to work on developing our own potential. And this is the last quote from one of the teachers. They said, I will say I'm very grateful to have wonderful leaders in my school. Overall, I have a great work relation with my school director, and she is fantastic, or he is fantastic. And I hope that they are saying that about you, and will say it more and more. So that's the end of my presentation. I want to just go through real quick in my last 5 minutes. Again, just to tell you, we are CGMS. We offer MACD accredited teacher education programs. We are an IMC recognized program, International Montessori Council, and we are a partner with Sarasota University, where our adult learners can dual enroll and complete a bachelor's degree or get a master's in education, Montessori education, or a master's in school leadership, using their teacher training towards that, with only a few classes all online to complete those degrees after they complete their training. I want to also mention since we're here talking about leadership today, our school leadership credential course. Currently, we are not offering it specifically for Asia. We actually have a couple of graduates from that program. Carol Ingman is here as a graduate of our school leadership program. And I know I saw some others, but the names went by quickly. This course is a 16-month course. It's all online except for a 1-week residential session. And if we could get a group of 10 to 20 school leaders who want to do this course, we can bring that 1 week to Asia. Maybe we'll come to Carol's school. Carol's graciously hosted us for our early childhood and elementary residential in the past, and we really appreciate her. In that course, we study 9 elements of school leadership, looking at school leadership, the common things like human resources and marketing, always looking from a Montessori perspective. What does it take to build a strong Montessori community? It's a wonderful course, and I hope some of you will consider it. Please email me. My email is going to come up in a minute if you're interested. Our special Asia programs, we offer an Asia certification course for teachers and for early childhood assistant teachers, for early childhood teachers, and an early childhood assistant course. We also offer professional development. These are 10-week online courses. One, Montessori Beginnings, is an introduction to the infant toddler level. Montessori Fundamentals Early Childhood is an introduction to the early childhood level, and Montessori Fundamentals Elementary is an introduction to the elementary level. In those courses, you'll get an overview of Montessori philosophy, an introduction to some basic classroom management and positive guidance for children, and then you'd get an overview of the early childhood curriculum and an overview of the elementary curriculum, depending on which of those that you're studying. I also want to mention that as part of our teacher certification course, we are doing the residency part. We're a blended learning course, which means part of it is online and then part of it is in person. The in-person part is only 10 days. We will be doing that this summer in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. We're not going to be at Carol's school this year. Thank you, Carol, for the great opportunities to be there. But we had quite a few learners in Yogyakarta, so we're heading there this summer. It is possible for teachers to attend the residency as professional development. So if you have someone who's not ready for the full certification course, they can attend the residency and then later enroll in the certification and use that 10-week they've already completed as their residency, or they can just do the residency for professional development, either as an introduction to Montessori, a very deep dive, I call it an intensive session, or as a refresher. If you have somebody, I know in some cases in Asia, people have done some of the online only courses that are not accredited, and there's a lot of gaps with those courses. Coming to residency, some of those gaps. And so that's available. You see the dates, the location. I hope some of you will consider. If you want more information about any of our Asian programs or our school leadership, we also offer certification for every level that is MACD accredited for elementary, for early childhood, infant, toddler, elementary, and secondary. They're all online except for that short residential piece. But in Asia, we also offer the residential piece. You can reach out to me in particular if you're interested in the leadership course, or if you're interested in creating a leadership collaborative that I talked about, a group of leaders that meet together to share ideas. IMC would like to support that. And as an IMC board member, I can help support the creation of that. And if you're particularly interested in any of our Asian early childhood certification, assistant certification, or professional development courses, or the residency, reach out specifically to Catherine. And that's all she wrote.
Okay, I'd like to also add that we have monthly webinars for those of you who are interested in joining us from time to time. So do join us. Once you signed up in any one of our webinars, your database will we will capture your name and email in our database, and you will receive updates.
Yeah, wonderful. And IMC is, we've been gone through a year-long process of transitioning. We used to be managed by the Montessori Foundation. Which is Tim Selden's foundation, and we originally grew out of the Montessori Foundation. And we reached a point as a board where, looking for the long-term growth and sustainability, we realized IMC needed to be able to manage itself and to be self-sustaining. So we've gone through a year-long process. We've reached our 1-year anniversary since then, and we're now moving full force ahead in creating new opportunities for school members, for individual members, and things like those leadership collaboratives. We do an educators forum once a month for teachers. There is a weekly leadership forum discussion meeting but unfortunately it is at 1 o'clock Eastern time in the US, and I know that that's the middle of the night for most of you, which is why we're offering the once a month webinars, but we do want to begin, our long range plan is to have them more frequently for Asia, in an Asian time zone. And we're also beginning the conversations about an Asian conference. I think 3 times we were in Hong Kong, and we are really hoping to come again to Asia. So thank you. I've gone 3 minutes over, and I'm going to stay on for anyone who might have questions or want to talk some more. And yes, I was just going to say, if you make sure that you contact us complete the survey. If you did not check in, if you send the survey, that'll be another way that Catherine will be able to recognize that you attended and get you a little professional development certificate. You get that really through sending us the little feedback form. It's quick and easy. So does anybody have any questions or comments? I just went on and on and on and didn't give time for other people to talk.
Do we have any questions? It's a golden opportunity to be asking the Montessori guru. I always ask lots and lots of questions.
Yeah, I forgot to mention when I was introducing myself that this June will be the 50 years since I started my Montessori journey, when I started my training. See, I'm old. Daniel, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this, by the way. It's nice I feel like I'm meeting a famous celebrity. So thank you so much for your time. I just had a quick question about the US. Like, what's the kind of, if there is one, like the standard for how many days like a veteran teacher might get off a year, like and how much in like or a beginning teacher? What would you say is
Well,
like,
I can just say from my school, I treated beginning and experienced teachers the same as far as time off. And if we were going to be truthful, it's the beginning teacher who probably needs more time off because they're really frazzled, especially a lot of times they're in training while they're beginning teaching. But I gave 10 days, and I would classify it as 8 sick days and 2, mental health days. I see a lot of schools, I would say probably somewhere between 7 and 10 is what people are giving days off a year. And that's in addition to all those days off that they get as, with holidays and whatnot. And, it's hard for us as a school. It means you have to have maybe some floaters. It's really helpful if you can put in your budget to have some floaters so you already have built in substitutes. And then bringing in substitutes can be a great way to get to know people who may have the potential to be a teacher, because these days it's just becoming harder and harder to even find people we want to put in training. At least that's
Mm.
what I'm finding. Catherine, can you take the survey scan the thing
Yeah.
off? I'd like to see people I'd like to see those who hanger-ons. Yeah, it's a hard
Yeah,
thing.
thank you.
I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. Anybody else? Any question or comment? Was the information helpful? No. Yeah, a lot of food for thought. I've just thought hearing the words directly from teachers was powerful. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And both from the standpoint of Center for Guided Montessori Studies, if there's anything I can help with, of course, Catherine's right there to answer questions. But at this point, we do not have specific cohorts for any level but early childhood. But I'm really interested in seeing that happen. Part of what needs to happen to make it happen is having instructors that are right there in Asia. When we have Asian instructors, it enables us to reduce the tuition rate, and we know that's necessary because the economy is different. But also to be able to bring in people for residential, if I've got instructors in Asia, that helps. But it's still possible to enroll in our other level courses if you're anywhere in the world. We make that work. But also, again, I want to mention, as a board member for IMC, we are so committed to being an inclusive organization that supports Montessori educators and leaders from all tribes, no matter what the initials are on your certificate, or even if you don't have a certificate, no matter where you are on your Montessori journey, you're welcomed, and we consider you part of our community. So let us know if there's anything we can do to help support Montessori in Asia.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I personally want to thank you, Kitty. You have shared so much wisdom. I was thinking in my mind, if I had attended this session, I would have skipped some of those mistakes that I made as a leader in the school. Yeah.
Well, and one of my sayings I've said since I was a young person is we have to forgive ourselves for being human. We're going to make mistakes. I don't think we saw anywhere in those comments from teachers that they were looking for perfect leaders. Probably more than anything, they're looking for confident yet humble leaders. Didn't Dr. Montessori talk so much about us needing to be humble in our work with children, and we need to be humble in our work with our teachers, be willing to say when we've made a mistake, and being open and ready to listen. So yes, Catherine, unfortunately, I learned a lot of these things the hard way myself. Yeah. And I saw something come in the chat, and I was talking and couldn't
Yeah.
read it. So let me
Thank
see
you.
what.
Thank you so much for those of you who left comments for Kitty. Yeah, we really appreciate her sharing her wisdom.
Yes, and Natalia says that we're really not equipped to be a leader. And what we find in who enrolls in our leadership course, a lot of times it's teachers who either start schools or are pulled up into leadership in their school, and we know how to be teachers, but that doesn't translate necessarily to being leaders. And then the other thing we get is people who've maybe run businesses or even been leaders in government schools, what we call public schools here in the U.S. And now they need to understand what leadership looks like from a Montessori perspective. So we all need to further develop those leadership skills. And I think that leading a school is a very special kind of leader. You have to be both the business leader and the educational leader, and it just takes, it's such, again, that sword's edge of, it's challenging, but it's good work. Okay, well, we could just hang out like this, but you're probably ready for bed, and I haven't had any breakfast, so I think it's time we wrap things up. And I see, is that you, Catherine, saying about the adolescent program?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to reply to those who are leaving messages.
Oh, okay. Yes, we do also have an adolescent introduction to Montessori Secondary, and it's an 8-week course. And we're not offering it specifically in Asia during Asian time zones, but it's absolutely possible to participate in a cohort. We'll get people with the wildest array of time zones in one cohort for any of our courses. And we just work really hard to try to make it work. A lot of the work is done on your own independently, but we do meet in all of our courses once a week and live in Zoom. And so sometimes it can be a little tricky to make that work. Asian time zones are often a lot easier for us to work with than European, because if we do an evening, it's usually morning for you guys. It might mean you have to step out of your classroom, or as a leader you have to make time in your leadership schedule. But the people in Europe, our nighttime is the middle of the night for them. Those are our hardest time zones to work with. But we are trying to do more and more in Asia so that things can be offered in your evening, because we know that's when you'll have time to step out of your office, or a teacher has time out of their classroom. So we're trying to get more your way. All right. Well, I think, we're going to close it up and say thank you very much for joining us tonight. Have a nice night, and I'll come back and talk some more in another future event.
Yes, yes. And Daniel has kindly offered to form a group, and he's provided his email as well.
Wonderful. And Daniel, I'll help follow up with that if anybody else says that they'd like to join and be part of that collaborative. What we did, the one that I was in, was so long ago that there was not internet at the time. And we had schools from on the west coast of Florida, if you know the U.S., from Tampa down to Naples, so all along from middle of the state down to the south end. And we would meet once a month. When we first started, we would go to each other's schools, so we saw all of the schools of the people in the collaborative. And then we started meeting at my school because it was in the middle. And we would meet once a month, and you came if you could, but the support that we felt from each other. And sometimes we'd have a plan. Let's everybody come ready to talk about how you do admissions, and we'd talk about that. And sometimes it would just be somebody had come and they would have just had such a challenging situation, and they need to vent, and they need to share, and they need help. And we were there for each other. And then we also developed relationships that we could call on each other outside of the meeting. And I just strongly encourage it, because, as I said, being a school leader is a lonely job.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things I wish I had had during setting up the school, I think. And actually, any kind of small business would have been good. But yeah, but like, and then as we get the Montessori, since this is an opportunity to have it like extremely relevant for us, because we have very specific problems that we're dealing with,
That's
and
right.
other schools, right?
You can go out and
Yeah.
join other school organizations or other business organizations and get, some camaraderie, but it's just not the same as being in a group with other Montessori leaders. You know, we're just a different breed. Sometimes I say I think I live in a different world than a lot of people, and which is a good thing because the other world is pretty scary right now, and unfortunately, it's encroaching upon ours. And we need the world needs what we do. The world needs more Montessori graduates, whether they're graduates from Montessori kindergarten or have an opportunity to continue longer. The world needs them because hopefully our children are compassionate, creative thinkers, problem solvers. And as we move more and more into a world of AI, we need children who grow up having strong human qualities of creativity and compassion and able to have social connections and work together. Those are the skills that are going to be needed when the machines are doing a lot of our work.
And I always have this joke going around telling people that we will need to found a new country called Montessori country. This is
Yes.
and invite more people to come and join us.
Well, we keep waiting for one of our graduates to grow up and be president. When I was teaching many years ago, actually, I was an administrator, and one of the 9 to 12 students was completely committed to being the president of the United States. And I sure hope he would be a young adult now. So let's see, if he was about 10 or 11, he'd be well into his 20s now. So maybe we'll see him yet, because we couldn't have more opposite than a Montessori president in the US right now. Oh well, we won't get political here, but we need some help here. Our world needs some help, and that was Dr. Montessori's goal. The longer she did this work, and lived through crisis after crisis, the more convinced she became that the only hope, she called children the hope and promise for humanity, and the only hope for humanity is our children. And that means we have to really get it as leaders that our work is about more than what traditionally happens in education. And these days, how do we even know what we need to teach children to prepare them for the world? What we need is them to be thinkers and doers. And I really think they need to have learned to do things with their hands, learn to be craftspeople, because when the machines are doing everything else for us, we're going to be baking bread and gardening and creating art and music and, maybe, but that's part of what keeps us human, and part of what our kids are missing in a world of technology, doing things with their hands.
Yes.
All right. I need to go because I'll just keep talking.
Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Kitty, for sharing with us your wisdom.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
I'm going to leave because
everyone.
I think if I don't leave, people aren't going to leave, Catherine. So I'm going to leave.
So much.
Bye.
Okay. Have a good day.